Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be talking all about propaganda. And this is going to be based on a book that you shared with me called Propaganda.
Yeah.
And it was written in 1928 by a guy named Edward Bernays.
Yeah, a really fascinating look back in time and
Yeah.
surprisingly relevant for
You
today.
know that Edward Bernays was like a pioneer in the world of public relations. And I thought it was really interesting that he wrote a book called Propaganda.
Well, it's interesting because he was really writing about the industry that he was helping to create.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's giving us a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain as to how public opinion is shaped,
Right.
even if we don't realize it.
Yeah. You had in your notes this term, invisible government.
Yeah,
Which sounds a little bit scary, a little bit ominous.
it does.
What did he mean by that?
Well, I think what he was getting at is that even in a democracy,
Okay.
there's this network of individuals and groups
Mhm.
that are influencing our thoughts and actions.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily that there are evil masterminds behind the curtain.
Right.
It's more that this is kind of like a natural outgrowth
Mm-hmm.
of the way that society is structured.
Okay, so if it's not this like conspiracy theory, evil mastermind kind of thing, how how is this invisible government at work?
Well, I think a good way to think about it is like political parties.
Okay.
They're not mentioned in the Constitution,
Right.
but they arose organically as a way to kind of help voters
Mm-hmm.
manage the overwhelming number of choices that they have
Right.
in elections.
Okay.
So he's saying that we're much more group-oriented
Mm-hmm.
than we realize, and that these groups really shape our views.
Okay, and I think he uses a really interesting example to illustrate this from the 1928 World Almanac.
Yeah, he points to the sheer number of organizations that are listed
Right.
just in the A section alone.
Right.
And, we were talking about this
Yeah.
beforehand. I know like a National Pickle Packers Association. I mean, there were some
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely.
looking
All
things.
sorts of different groups.
Yeah.
And his point is that the opinions that we encounter in one group
Okay.
influence how we think and act in other groups.
Yeah.
And so it creates this web of interconnected opinions
Right.
that shape what he calls the group mind.
Okay, so we've been talking about the invisible government,
Uh-huh.
but let's actually talk about the word propaganda.
Right.
Because when most people, myself included, hear that word,
Yeah.
we automatically have a negative reaction.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost become
Yeah.
synonymous with lies and manipulation.
Yeah, exactly. So how is Bernays using this word?
Well, I think he's trying to make the point that propaganda itself
Okay.
is neutral.
Okay.
It's the cause and the information being spread that matter.
Okay.
He even points out that the very definition of propaganda, which
Yeah.
is a group spreading a doctrine or system,
Right.
would apply to spreading the truth.
So even a positive message
Yeah,
could still be considered propaganda depending on how it's being used.
exactly. It's
Determines.
all about intent and context.
Does he give us any modern examples, I'm using air quotes here,
Yeah.
of how this kind of propaganda is being used?
He does. He actually uses a number of examples
Okay.
straight from the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
Things that the average reader wouldn't even
Okay.
necessarily think twice about as being propaganda.
So he was already saying back in 1928 that not all news is objective news.
Exactly.
All
And
right.
and he goes on to kind of delve a little deeper into the psychology behind this.
Yeah.
He says that people rarely understand the true reasons for their actions.
Okay, that's a little bit abstract.
It is. So let
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
give me an example.
Yeah, so let's say a man buys a new car.
Okay.
On the surface, it might seem like,
Yeah.
okay, well, he needs transportation. But the deeper motives could be social status,
Okay.
or impressing his neighbors,
Okay.
or even unconscious desires that he himself doesn't even want to admit.
So you're saying that effective propaganda needs to appeal to emotion more than logic.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bernays talks about this shift from old propaganda to new propaganda.
What's the difference?
So old propaganda was really about directly persuading individuals.
Okay.
So just hammering the message over and over again.
Got it.
But new propaganda focuses on understanding group dynamics
Okay.
and removing sales resistance,
Mm-hmm.
essentially creating an environment where people want the product or idea.
So how do you do that?
Well, he uses this really clever example of pianos.
Okay.
Instead of just advertising pianos,
Right.
you create a trend of music rooms in homes.
Okay.
And suddenly people feel like they need a piano
Absolutely.
to kind of fit in with that.
So you're not really selling the product itself. You're selling a lifestyle or an idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's about shaping the circumstances,
Yeah.
not just the message.
Does he have any other examples of this?
He does. He gives this fascinating example of bringing velvet back into fashion.
Wait, velvet, wasn't that like totally out of style?
It was.
I mean, it sounds like a very specific example.
Well, he was writing in 1928, so,
Right.
Fashions change.
Okay, that makes sense.
But instead of just advertising velvet,
Yeah.
they targeted the source of fashion, which was Paris.
Okay.
They got designers to use it. They had influential
That
people.
was like going straight to the influencers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they manufactured this circumstance
Yeah.
of velvet being trendy.
And then I'm guessing the magazines pick up on it, the department stores pick up on it.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, velvet's back in fashion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does this mean that we're all just pawns in some elaborate
Bernays gets surprisingly
propaganda game?
ethical.
Wait a minute. Ethical propaganda? Those two words don't really go together.
I know. It's
That's
a strange juxtaposition.
Yep.
But he argues that a good public relations counsel
Okay.
won't work for dishonest clients
Okay.
or promote harmful products.
Why not?
Because he says their reputation is tied to the client,
Okay.
and plus they're trying to influence the court of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be both advocates and judges in that court.
So there's a certain level of responsibility. Yeah.
So it's not just about manipulating people.
It's about building trust.
Exactly.
Okay.
And here's where the line between business and the public gets blurry.
What do you mean?
Well, companies were starting to realize that they needed public approval,
Okay.
not just to sell products,
Mm-hmm.
but for everything from labor policies to stock offerings.
Okay.
Public opinion was becoming key
Okay.
to their success.
So how did they adapt to this?
Well, think about the rise of mass production. Factories could churn out
Yeah.
huge quantities of goods, but now they needed to create demand
Okay.
to stay profitable.
So advertising and propaganda become even more important.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it wasn't just rival brands competing anymore.
It was.
It was entire industries
Oh, wow.
competing for a slice of the consumer's dollar.
Okay.
Bernays' colleague, O.H. Cheney, called this a war on the dining room table.
War on the dining room table. You have to tell me more about this.
Well, he was talking about how, you've got the orange growers who want you to eat oranges for breakfast.
Okay.
And then you've got the sauerkraut folks battling the olive industry.
This is amazing.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to get a spot
It's such a great image.
on your plate.
Yeah. Of how much more complex
Exactly.
this whole world of influence is becoming.
Yeah. And as companies grew larger,
Right.
their impact on the public grew larger. And so did their need to kind of manage those relationships.
So everything's kind of scaling up at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And even international corporations needed global public acceptance,
Right.
not only for their products, but for their financial investments as well.
This is This is so insightful.
It is.
We're going to take a quick pause, but when we come back, we'll dig even deeper into this fascinating world of propaganda.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. And we're back, continuing our deep dive into Edward Bernays' propaganda. It's really amazing to me how much of what he was writing about back in 1928 still applies today.
It is. I mean, he was talking about these concepts decades before the internet even existed,
Right.
let alone social media and things like that.
It makes you wonder how much has really changed. Are we just more aware of it now? Or have the techniques become more sophisticated?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it really underscores the importance of understanding the mechanics of propaganda, how it works, because only then can we start to see it at play in our own lives.
So let's get into some of the specifics here.
Okay.
What are some of the specific techniques that Bernays highlights in the book?
Well, he talks about a whole range of tools.
Okay.
Everything from traditional ones like public speeches and newspaper articles
Okay.
to newer mediums like radio and even motion pictures.
Motion pictures.
Yeah.
That's pretty forward thinking for 1928.
It is. He recognized their ability to shape ideas and habits on a national scale.
So he saw film as a powerful tool for propaganda.
Oh, absolutely. He argued that because films were made to meet market demands, they often reflected and even exaggerated popular tendencies.
So instead of pushing new ideas, they were more often reinforcing existing ones.
Exactly. Catering to the desires of the audience.
What about something more traditional like newspapers.
Yeah, well, he points out that even seemingly neutral news reports
Okay.
could be carefully crafted
Okay.
to shape public opinion.
So again, even back then, the idea that not all news
Yeah.
is objective news.
Exactly.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and he goes on to delve a little deeper into the psychology behind this.
Okay.
He says that people rarely understand the true reasons for their actions.
We were talking about this earlier with the car example.
Exactly. On the surface, somebody might say,
Hey.
well, I bought this car because I needed transportation.
Yeah.
But the underlying reasons
Right.
could be much more complex than that.
And a skilled propagandist would know how to tap into those deeper motivations.
Precisely.
Okay.
Those underlying emotions and desires.
So it's not just about appealing to logic, it's about appealing to those.
Yeah, it's about understanding the psychology of persuasion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, but also kind of unsettling when you think about it.
It is a little bit unsettling
Yeah.
because it raises the question,
Yeah.
if we're constantly being influenced in ways that we don't even realize,
Right.
how can we make truly independent decisions?
That is the question.
And that's, I think, what makes Bernays' book so relevant, even almost a century later.
Yeah.
He's not just exposing the techniques of propaganda.
Right.
He's challenging us to become more aware of the forces that shape our perceptions and our choices.
It's like he's giving us the keys to break free from the matrix.
Exactly.
So in a way, he's kind of empowering us.
He is.
Yeah.
He's giving us the tools
Yeah.
to think critically
Okay.
and to make more informed decisions.
And that brings us back to this whole idea of the ethical responsibilities of the propagandist. Because if someone has this knowledge and they're using it to manipulate people.
Well, and that's where Bernays, he argues that a good public relations counselor won't work for dishonest clients
Okay.
or promote harmful products.
So it's not just about winning at all costs.
Exactly.
It's about using this knowledge for good.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that the power of persuasion comes with a certain responsibility to use it ethically.
So we've been talking about all these different techniques and how propaganda works. But let's kind of bring it back to the individual.
Okay.
If we're being bombarded with all of this propaganda all the time, how can we become more discerning consumers of information?
Well, I think Bernays gives us some clues.
Okay.
He says, question everything.
Okay.
Who's creating this message? What are their motivations?
Okay.
What are they trying to achieve?
Okay.
And how does this information fit into the bigger picture?
So it's about developing that healthy skepticism.
Exactly.
Not just accepting everything we see and hear at face value.
Right. Which is tough
Yeah.
in today's world with so much information coming at us from all directions.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's more important than ever to really try to develop those critical thinking skills.
So it's about understanding the techniques of propaganda so we can recognize them when they're being used.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And once you start to see the patterns, they become very difficult to miss.
It's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
The language of persuasion.
I like that.
Once you know the grammar, you can start to deconstruct the sentences and understand what's really being said.
It's also about being aware of our own biases and how they might be influencing our perceptions.
Because we all have those filters, right?
We do.
The ways that we see the world
Absolutely.
based on our own experiences.
And those filters can be manipulated
Yes.
by skilled propagandists.
Right.
But by becoming more conscious of them, we can start to see through the smoke and mirrors.
This is all really starting to click for me now.
Okay.
It's like Bernays is giving us this framework for navigating this complex world of information and influence. It's like he's saying, look, propaganda is a part of our lives whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
But by understanding how it works, we can become more conscious and empowered participants in the process.
Precisely.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far.
Yeah, it has.
We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll continue exploring Bernays' ideas and discuss some of the practical takeaways from his work.
Sounds good.
Stay with us. Welcome back to our deep dive on Edward Bernays' propaganda. You know, one thing that really struck me is how Bernays connects propaganda to the evolution of democracy itself.
Yeah. I mean, he makes this really interesting argument that as power shifted from monarchs to the people, managing public opinion became even more important. Leaders couldn't just dictate anymore.
Right.
They needed to persuade.
So propaganda almost became this necessary tool for
Yeah.
governing these increasingly complex modern societies.
Exactly. And Bernays argues that this wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
It was just a natural consequence
Right.
of this shift in power.
Of course, it all comes down to how that tool is used.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Which is why Bernays stresses ethics so
Yeah.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he talks about the good public relations counsel acting as both an advocate and a judge
Right.
in the court of public opinion.
So it's not about winning at all costs.
Exactly.
It's about advocating for causes that really serve the public good.
Precisely.
So let's bring this into our world today.
Okay.
How do Bernays' ideas apply in this age of information overload and
Yeah.
ever-evolving technology?
Well, I think his insights are more relevant than ever.
Okay.
I mean, we're constantly bombarded with messages
Yeah.
from social media to advertising to news outlets,
Yeah.
all competing for our attention, trying to
Yeah.
shape our views.
It's like that war on the dining room table, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. It's not just about what we eat anymore.
Right.
It's about what we think, what we believe,
Yeah.
how we vote, what we buy,
Yeah. It's everything.
every aspect of our lives.
So how do we navigate this? How do we become better critical thinkers
Okay.
and not get manipulated?
Well, I think Bernays gives us some clues. He says, question everything.
Okay.
Who's sending this message?
Mm.
What are their motives?
Okay.
What's the end goal?
Mhm.
And how does it all fit into the bigger picture?
So develop that healthy skepticism.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't just accept everything at face value.
Which is really hard.
It is.
It's so much information coming at us all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's more important than ever
Mm-hmm.
to really try to cultivate that sense of discernment.
We're talking about recognizing those patterns.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. The telltale signs of persuasion.
Yeah. Once you see them, it's like a light bulb goes off.
It is. It's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
The language of persuasion.
Yeah. And once you understand the grammar,
Exactly.
you can start to deconstruct the sentences and see what's really being said.
And I think it's also about being aware of our own biases.
Okay.
You know, how might those be used against us?
Yeah. Because we all have those filters.
We do.
Right.
The ways that we see the world based on our own experiences.
Those filters can be manipulated.
Right. But being conscious of them helps us see through those tricks.
Exactly.
This has been so eye-opening.
Yeah, it's been great.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of propaganda and how it shapes our world.
Yeah, I think Bernays' book is really a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're not just passive consumers of information.
Mm-hmm.
We have the power to question, to analyze, to think critically.
And that's what makes us informed and empowered.
Absolutely.
So to everyone listening, next time you see a message that feels persuasive, take a second. Ask yourself those questions. Who's behind this?
Mm-hmm.
What do they want?
Right.
And how are they trying to sway me? You might be surprised at what you discover.
Yeah, and that discovery just might be the first step to taking back control in a world that's constantly trying to tell you what to think and do.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of propaganda.
My pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.